The hypersonic phase just started. Not in the sky, not in a war zone, but inside the global financial system. And this time the shock didn't come from missiles or markets crashing overnight. It came from something far more subtle, far more dangerous. The US dollar, the world's most powerful financial weapon, just hit a breaking point. Quietly, invisibly, but decisively, and almost nobody saw it coming. Because for decades the dollar has been untouchable. The backbone of global trade, the lifeline of energy markets, the foundation of financial stability. But now, that foundation is cracking. And when the foundation cracks, the entire structure above it becomes unstable. Here's the trigger. A system designed to provide unlimited liquidity is suddenly running into limits. Dollar funding markets are tightening, swap rates are spiking, foreign demand for US debt is weakening, and the cost of accessing dollars globally is rising fast. This is not a normal fluctuation. This is stress. System-level stress. The kind that precedes major financial shifts. Think of it like this. A $20,000 financial move can now outsmart $1 trillion system. Small changes in liquidity, minor disruptions in funding markets. They ripple outward, destabilizing entire economies. That's the vulnerability. The hidden weakness inside what appears to be an invincible empire. And this is why it matters. Because the dollar isn't just a currency. It's the operating system of the global economy. When it malfunctions, everything connected to it begins to fail. Trade slows, markets tighten, nations scramble for access, and power starts to shift. Now let's go deeper. The global system depends on a constant flow of dollars, not just inside the United States but across the entire world. Banks, corporations, governments, they all need dollars to operate, to trade, to service debt, to survive. But here's the problem. Most of those dollars exist outside the United States, in what's known as the euro-dollar system, a massive, largely unregulated network of dollar liabilities spread across global banks, trillions upon trillions of dollars. And when stress hits that system, liquidity disappears fast. That's exactly what we're seeing now. Dollar swap lines, the emergency lifelines between central banks, are becoming more active. Funding costs are rising. Banks are becoming cautious, because they know something most people don't. Liquidity is no longer guaranteed, and when liquidity dries up, panic follows. Now look at the numbers. US national debt has crossed $34 trillion. Interest payments alone are consuming a massive portion of government spending. Foreign buyers, once eager to hold US treasuries, are pulling back. Some are even selling. Why? Because holding dollars is no longer risk-free. That's the shift. For decades, US treasuries were considered the safest asset in the world, the ultimate safe haven. But now, with rising inflation and aggressive rate hikes, the value of those assets is under pressure, and confidence is starting to erode. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Less demand for treasuries means higher yields. Higher yields mean higher borrowing costs. Higher borrowing costs mean more debt. And more debt means more pressure on the system. This is how financial systems break. Not with a single event, but with a series of compounding stresses. Now here's where it gets even more critical. Because while the dollar is facing internal pressure, external forces are also building. Countries are actively seeking alternatives. Bilateral trade agreements are bypassing the dollar. Gold reserves are increasing. New financial alliances are forming. This is not coincidence. This is strategic repositioning. Because the world is starting to recognize a simple truth. The dollar is powerful, but it's not invincible. And once that realization spreads, the shift accelerates. This is the core conflict. On one side you have the perception of absolute dominance. The dollar as the unchallenged global reserve currency. On the other side you have a growing reality of vulnerability, debt, inflation, liquidity stress, declining trust. And the gap between perception and reality is where crises are born. Now to truly understand what's happening, we need to step back. Because this isn't just about the dollar. This is about a pattern that has repeated throughout history. Empires rise on strong financial systems, and they fall when those systems break. Look at Rome. At its peak, it controlled vast territories, trade routes, and resources. But over time, its currency was debased, silver content reduced, inflation surged, trust collapsed, and with it, the empire followed. Look at the British Empire. The pound sterling once dominated global trade. London was the financial center of the world. But after years of war, debt, and overextension, the system weakened. The pound lost its status, and a new power emerged. Now look at the United States. Massive global influence, military dominance, financial control through the dollar, but also massive debt, increasing financial strain, and a system stretched to its limits. This is the pattern. Not collapse overnight, but gradual erosion, followed by sudden shifts. And at the center of it all is money. Because financial systems are the true engines of power. Not armies, not politics. Money. And when the money breaks, everything else follows. Now let's talk about the hidden forces driving this shift. Debt is the first. The modern financial system is built on debt. Governments borrow, corporations borrow, individuals borrow. Growth is fueled by expanding credit, but debt has a limit. And when that limit is reached, the system has to adjust, either through inflation or through collapse. Right now, we're seeing both pressures at the same time. Inflation erodes purchasing power. It weakens currencies. It forces central banks to raise rates. But higher rates make debt harder to sustain. This is the trap, and there is no easy way out. The second force is currency competition. As confidence in the dollar fluctuates, other systems begin to emerge, not necessarily to replace it immediately, but to reduce dependence on it. This creates fragmentation. Instead of one dominant system, you get multiple competing ones. And that reduces stability, because the strength of the dollar comes from its central role. Remove that centrality, and the system becomes unpredictable. The third force is technological disruption. Digital currencies, blockchain systems, decentralized finance. These are not just innovations, they are alternatives, and they challenge the traditional system at its core. Now combine all three forces: debt pressure, currency competition, technological disruption, and you get a system under extreme stress. This is not a normal cycle. This is a structural shift. Now let's look forward. In the next 24 to 72 hours, markets may not collapse. There may not be a dramatic headline, but beneath the surface, pressure will continue to build. Liquidity conditions will tighten, funding markets will fluctuate, central banks will monitor closely, ready to intervene if necessary. But interventions have limits, because every time liquidity is injected, it solves a short-term problem, but creates a long-term one. More money, more debt, more instability. In the long term, the implications are much bigger. If the dollar continues to face pressure, its role as the global reserve currency could gradually decline. Not disappear overnight, but weaken. And that would change everything. Global trade would become more complex, financial markets more volatile, power more distributed. This is not just an economic shift, it's a geopolitical one, because control over money is control over the system. And losing that control is losing influence. This is why the situation is so dangerous, because transitions like this are rarely smooth. They involve conflict, competition, uncertainty, and sometimes crisis. So here's the final warning. The dollar hitting a breaking point is not the end. It's the beginning of a phase where the global financial system enters uncharted territory, where old assumptions no longer hold, where stability can no longer be taken for granted, and where the balance of power begins to shift. History shows us what happens next. Empires don't collapse because they are attacked from the outside. They collapse because their internal systems can no longer support their power. And when that moment arrives, it doesn't announce itself. It unfolds, quietly, then suddenly. So the real question is this: are we witnessing a temporary disruption, or the early stages of the biggest financial transformation in modern history?